This
work.
conference will now be recorded.
And my computer from the city also doesn't work. So I can see a couple of you, but not very many of you. But my work computer said, or my city computer said that I had a virus. So I'll probably have to bring it into City Hall. So with that, we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin.
Here.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Here.
Meske.
Here.
Fuentes.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Alvarado.
Here.
Osmus.
Here.
Plowman.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
We will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Get my flag ready here. Right there it is. It's not working over there. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fagerly. Are there any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda as presented?
I would like to make one, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
We can either talk about it separately, or I guess we could put it under number 12. It's about the baseball stadiums for the Stingers and the Rails. They need to know what's happening, because the Rails do have a game planned for Sunday, June 28th. And all the other teams in their league have the games scheduled. New London Spicer played their town team baseball last night. Mayor Baker approved of it, so we'll have to decide that. So,
are you okay if we put it under number 12? Is that okay?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So, so both the Stingers and the Rails is what you would like to speak about.
Yes.
Okay, I got that under number 12. Any other additions or deletions to the agenda as presented? Entertain a motion to.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Councilmember Meske seconds. Motion by Councilmember Fagerly to approve the amended agenda. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
Meske.
Aye.
Fuentes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman. Plowman.
Aye. Affirmative.
Nelson.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
Councilmember Plowman, that was my. Councilmember Plowman, that was my fault. I had two things going at the same time. That motion passes. Next, we have consent items. City Clerk Thompson.
Hi, Marv. It's Janelle filling in for Judy. Under the consent agenda for tonight, we have for the City Council's approval, the emergency City Council minutes of May 29th, 2020, the City Council minutes of June 1st, the Willmar Municipal Utilities Board minutes of June 8th, Caris Health Rice Hospital Board minutes of June 3rd, accounts payable report for May 28th through June 10th, And for the council's acceptance, the Park and Rec Board minutes of May 20th, Police Commission minutes of April 17th, the building report for the month of May, and for the council's information, Invest in Willmar Board minutes of May 20th, and the Main Street Board minutes of May 19th.
Move to approve.
Osmus, second.
Motion by Meskey, seconded by Osmus to approve the consent items. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Meskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye. Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Next, we'll open the annual stormwater meeting. The public is able to call in if they have questions. That phone number is 320-335-7135. You must dial the area code first. With that, I'll open the stormwater meeting. And I don't know about that phone number. I'm just reading off what I have in front of me. So it's not the number we normally use, but I'm using the one that we have on my notes.
Mayor, members of the council, I can start off and then I'll turn it over to Sarah, if that's all right with everyone. If not, interrupt me. Primary goal of the city's MS4, which is Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, we have a general permit, and the primary goal of that is to improve water quality. One of the permit requirements, sorry, I had some feedback. One of the permit requirements is to facilitate public education. The purpose of this public meeting is to do that and gather public comments while providing an update on the status of compliance with that MS4 permit. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Sarah, who's prepared a PowerPoint presentation, and Sarah Sietsma is our environmental specialist. Sarah, we're not hearing you.
Sean, do you have the PowerPoint with you to where it can get uploaded?
Yeah, Sarah's been made presenter. I may, if it's in the packet, yeah, I can just go through the packet if we can. And Sarah may have to, maybe she can call in. May have to call in and see
Sarah,
if
do
we
you
get
have the call-in number? So we can't hear you, Sarah. I know I had trouble getting into the call as well. So you may have to just get out of the call and then come back in. Sean, why don't you go ahead and start?
All right. Sorry, Mayor, members of the council, and the fact that I'm not a presenter, you won't be able to see my screen. So follow along on the on your
That's fine.
on your agenda. When we hear from Sarah, she can take over where I leave off. So starting on page 62 of the packet. 62 is splash screen. Of course, this is the annual stormwater public meeting and the presentation that Sarah put together for this. So it starts off by what is an MS4. Well, she got her screen saved now. MS4 is
Well, I can hear Sean.
Now you're up, Sarah.
Thank you, go, Sarah.
Sarah, go ahead.
All right, I'll do my best. I know there's a little bit of delay on what I tell my screen to do and when you guys can see it. So like Sean was saying, the annual stormwater meeting is part of our general permit requirement. And so this meeting always happens in June. And this is just this year's meeting. And again, he explained a little bit about what an MS4 is. So MS4 just stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. And that just means it's the conveyance system that conveys the stormwater that the city owns and discharges stormwater to waters of the U.S. So that's the fancy description of it. It's not a combined sewer. So it's not a combined stormwater and wastewater system that used to be common back in the day, and now that's virtually obsolete in Minnesota. And it's also not part of the sewage treatment system or the publicly owned treatment works. So stormwater does not get treated by our wastewater treatment plant or anything else, any other type of system before it's discharged to those surface waters. What is stormwater? We'll do some background kind of level information in this presentation, given that it is for public education and public engagement. And this presentation will, at some point in the near future, be on our website so that the public can access it there. So I need to do a little bit of kind of ground level information. Most of us have heard the term stormwater or stormwater runoff before, but for others who haven't, stormwater is just the rain or the snowmelt that discharges into our lakes, our rivers, our streams, our wetlands. The rain and the snowmelt runs over the impervious surfaces like roads, sidewalks, driveways, parking lots, all the rooftops. Impervious surfaces just means it's a hard surface that water can't drain through, so it runs off. This graphic just again sort of explains stormwater and some of the pollutants and things that it might run into and pick up on its journey to our surface waters. So it runs off the roof, it runs off our lawns, so any fertilizer or chemicals that we use on our lawn, any pet waste that's there, it runs off all our driveways and our parking lots and our streets, so any spilled motor oil or gas or anything else that might be leaking out of vehicles. Any trash or debris that is blowing around or that collects in our gutters, any sediment, any salt or sand that we're using during winter road maintenance, all of that gets picked up by this runoff and washes into our lakes and our rivers. So why is stormwater such a concern? If it's just the rainfall or the snowmelt, why do we talk about it so much? Again, that graphic gave us some idea. It's because stormwater picks up all of these pollutants and it delivers them directly into all our surface waters. And we use those surface waters in Minnesota a lot for recreating. And there are plenty of communities that also use surface waters for their drinking water supply. So again, here's just another list of some of the more common pollutants that run off with our stormwater. So stormwater is not treated, like I said before it gets to our lakes and our rivers and our wetlands. One of the newer stormwater pollutants that's been getting more attention the last several years is chloride. So that comes from a variety of sources, but a big one is the salt that we use on our roads and our parking lots, our own personal driveways and sidewalks. We need to be safe in Minnesota in the winter, so using salt is a necessary thing. It's also in our water softeners, it's in fertilizer, it's in dust control that we use, again, many sources of it, but once it gets into our surface water bodies, it's virtually impossible to get it out. So it becomes quickly toxic to the aquatic wildlife and the aquatic plants. We have to, living in Minnesota, we're a headwater state. So whether our stormwater in the city of Willmar goes to Hot Creek and then the Minnesota River, or it goes to the South Fork Crow River and then to the Mississippi. We're a headwater state, and so it's imperative that we're good stewards of our water because so many communities downstream, again, are using this water for drinking water sources and as we recreate, and again, the aquatic wildlife as well. Besides all the pollutants that stormwater can pick up on its way, it's kind of a 1-2 punch as it flows over all of those impervious surfaces. It collects, so it collects from all of our rooftops and all of our driveways and all of our streets and everything, and it dumps all that water really fast into the receiving water, the surface water, whether that's Hot Creek or the South Fork Crow. And when that increased volume of water hits those rivers or those other channels, the discharge in that river is higher and faster, which causes increased erosion within the river channel. So that erosion picks up even more sediment and carries it downstream, again, adding to the pollution and to the destruction of habitats and things downstream. So what are we doing about this now that I've laid out that stormwater is such an issue? The city, as part of our general stormwater permit, has a stormwater pollution prevention plan, or what you may have heard referred to as the SWIP. There are 6 parts of that plan, and we'll go through each of those 6 parts just briefly, and I can explain a little bit about what it is and what the city is doing. So the first one is the public education and outreach. So this has been an area that we have been kind of tackling in the last couple of years, trying to greatly increase our public education and our outreach stuff. Last year in 2019, we started a rain barrel cost share program. So the city went in with other municipalities and counties, and together they purchased a semi-load of rain barrels, which means we got like a bulk buy discount on them. Last year, I only committed to 10 of those rain barrels, and we sold all 10 within a couple of weeks to residents in Willmar. We had hoped to do that rain barrel cost share program again this year. However, given the COVID issues with transportation and shipping, our rain barrels are actually made and shipped out of Canada. So we weren't able to get rain barrels this year. However, I have a list of citizens who have been calling and emailing me already this spring and summer, and so we'll make sure that we get them taken care of next summer. And again, we hope to expand that far beyond 10 rain barrels a year. Another thing that we started in 2019 was the Public Works Department Facebook page. So we kind of hit up the social media education hard in the last 7, 8, 9 months here. Since October, when we started that Facebook page, we've published 30 posts that are specifically about stormwater, and those 30 posts have reached more than 12,000 people. So we're pretty excited about that. That means we're getting some interaction. That means people are clicking and reading and learning. And we've been coordinating with the other cities' social media platforms and website and things so that we can share that message. If it's a bigger message or a more important one, we can share that across other platforms and reach even more people. We also partnered with the Hot Creek Watershed Project here just in May, and we sent out a postcard to residents in Willmar who live in the Hot Creek Watershed area. So that's sort of over on the west side versus the east side. So 2,097 residents received a postcard about keeping their grass clippings out of stormwater. And you may have seen a Facebook post that went up about that too, because grass clippings isn't something we think about. You know, it hits the street or our driveway, maybe it gets washed off, whatever, our yard's mowed, we're happy. We're, not the ugly yard in the neighborhood. But those grass clippings carry a lot of phosphorus in them, which is fertilizer for the algae when it hits our lakes and rivers. So we wanted to hit that and make sure people are just, again, being good stewards as they're going about their daily maintenance activities. And then another thing we're hoping to do for some outreach is Nature Night at the Stingers. We have that planned for July, as with lots of other activities. We don't know that that for sure will happen, but the plan was that we would have the city there with a stormwater display and a wastewater display. The county was going to be there, or is, with their Soil and Water Conservation District, Pheasants Forever, MUC, and again, the Hot Creek Watershed Project. All of us were going to have interactive games or activities for the kids to do to learn about just different subjects, anything nature related, basically. And so stormwater is going to be one of those if we can do it. Again, we'll see where that one goes. The next piece of our stormwater pollution prevention plan is the public participation and involvement. And so this annual stormwater presentation is a big part of that. So we do this once a year. It gives the public a given assigned opportunity to listen in, to hear, to learn, and to provide feedback, give us questions, things like that. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning, we're also going to put this presentation on our city website. So it'll be there, there'll be contact information. So at any point during the year, any citizens can go to our website and see this presentation, and then they can provide, again, more feedback. Another way that we're doing public participation is that the city is involved with this Adopt a Storm Drain program. And so you go to the adoptadrain.org website, and you can enter your address, and then you can see what storm drains, so the catch basins in the street, those storm drains, which ones are available or for adoption in your neighborhood. So you can adopt a drain. I'm pretty sure you can actually name it, so it comes up on their map, and then you keep it clear of yard waste, grass clippings, leaves, trash, anything else that might make its way down to the storm drain. They suggest about 15 minutes twice a month to just keep this cleaned out, help keep things from going down through our storm drain system and into our surface waters. You can track your impact online, so you can estimate the amount of debris that you're collecting out of the storm drain, and then report that online, and they have like a running tally going on. And it's a way to use sort of positive peer pressure or positive social pressure. So if your neighbors see you out there, you know, they'll ask questions, they'll see it, you can encourage them to adopt one. Maybe you can go in with a few of them and adopt it. It's just a great way, a really hands-on way to help improve that stormwater quality right in your neighborhood. And so when you go to that Adopt a Drain website, this is a map that you can pull up. And again, this is right by our lakes here in Willmar. And so you can see all of those little balloons are the storm drains, and you can adopt one of those and keep it clear. And it's Hamlin University actually is kind of the one running behind this program. And so they've partnered with some local agencies to get some of this GPS work done on the storm drain locations. But then again, it's statewide. You can see sort of the collective impact that everyone is having by just adopting a storm drain and spending a few hours a year helping keep that clear. So the third piece is, or fourth, whichever we're on, is the illicit discharge, detection, and elimination. And so that's a little bit of a mouthful. Illicit discharge is just any discharge to an MS4, so any discharge to our stormwater system that is not composed entirely of stormwater. So this can be direct connections, if we have any of those old wastewater pipe connections that are directly into our storm sewer system, or it can be indirect connections, meaning infiltration from any sort of cracked sanitary system, or even any inflow from groundwater into a cracked stormwater system. So we have annual staff training to help identify these illicit discharges. So our public works staff and our engineering staff have sort of been trained as they're going out and about around town anyway to see any of these illicit discharges to our stormwater, and then we need to correct those problems. So again, if there's wastewater connections, we want to make sure that that wastewater is going to the wastewater treatment plant, getting treated appropriately, and not being discharged to our surface waters. And then if there's groundwater inflow, we need to make sure that we're not sending extra groundwater through our system and overwhelming our system. And groundwater is generally a clean source of water, so we don't want that adding, our pollutants adding into that. Construction site stormwater control is the next piece of our plan. So staff conducts inspections on active construction sites within the city, and they're out looking for erosion and sediment control practices. So you'll see things like silt fence up. Sometimes you'll see things like inlet protection, and so those storm drains or catch basins. There might be some green bio rolls around those, or there might be something sitting inside of the storm drain, collecting any of that construction site sediment. You'll see street sweeping going on some of the bigger projects. If they have tracking issues, you see erosion control blankets, seeding and mulching, all those things. And so the permit says that all those active construction sites have to be inspected weekly or within or after half-inch rain events. And so our staff has completed training, and they do annual continuing education to keep up with those certifications. In the last 12 months, staff has conducted 83 construction site inspections. And so again, that doesn't mean 83 construction sites, but we do multiple inspections throughout the life of a construction project. Post-construction stormwater management is another part of our SWIP. And so again, the part of the city's stormwater conveyance system includes stormwater ponds, wetlands, and then all those outfall structures. And so we do annual inspections of those also to make sure that they're functioning properly, to make sure they're in good shape, things like that. So the city owns and maintains 14 ponds and 19 wetlands and more than 200 outfall structures. And so again, in the last 12 months, staff has completed 23 stormwater pond or wetland inspections and 75 outfall inspections. Another part of the post-construction stormwater management, which I know this group board council, has talked about so many times, is the local option sales tax stormwater projects. So we know those stormwater projects are going to further improve both our stormwater quantity issues and our quality issues. And the last piece is the pollution prevention and good housekeeping. So the Public Works Department runs the street sweeper annually. We purchased a second street sweeper, and I just talked to Gary, and he said he had hoped it would have been here by now, but because, again, of COVID delays, he's expecting it in July. And so in 2019, the city street sweeping collected more than 6,000 cubic yards of material off the street. So that's 6,000 yards of leaves and grass clippings and sand and sediment and salt and trash and branches and everything else that did not make it into our lakes and our rivers. And that is amazing. And the second street sweeper is obviously going to increase that number. So the other thing that we've been doing is the MPCA, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, has been doing smart salting trainings around the state. And so we had 10 of our city public works operators attend that smart salting training last year. And the rest of our city operators, along with the county snowplow operators, will attend the same smart salting training here in the middle of July. And so just, again, as you learn more tech-savvy ways of doing your winter maintenance, you can save in the amount of salt that you have to apply, and you can continue to provide the same level of service on your winter maintenance. Another big thing that the city was able to do is the conversion over to brine application for winter street maintenance. So already in the first year of that, the city reduced its salt use by 25%, which meant 150 tons less of salt. So that's 150 tons that, one, the city didn't have to pay for, and two, didn't hit our lakes and our rivers. So we're pretty excited about that. And again, by continuing that smart salting training, we think we can do even better. The last thing on sort of a pollution prevention list is the city staff is participating on the Hot Creek One Watershed One Plan Advisory Committee. And so the One Watershed One Plan, sort of a fancy name again, it's a state thing. It's a program that's developed to create a comprehensive watershed management plan. So it basically aligns all your local water planning on a watershed scale. And so this is going to be the Hot Creek Minnesota River watershed boundary, and it builds off existing local government structure, water plans, and local capacity. It incorporates existing data and information. It's not just another send out monitors and grab more data and put it in a plan and stick it on a shelf. It's really utilizing a lot of the data and planning that has been done to this point at the city level or the county level and putting it all together, and then eliciting input from the agencies, from the citizens, from the stakeholder groups, so that priorities can be made on a local level and targeted actions can be developed to actually achieve some progress, again, on a local level. So it's not the state coming in and saying, you guys need to target this area, you need to reduce sediment or phosphorus or whatever it is by this amount, and you need to measure it. It's the locals on the ground saying, this area is a priority, this is one that we see a problem in all the time, here's how we think we can actually step up ourselves and our neighbors and make some changes. And so that's been a good advisory committee to be part of too, to be able to share the things that the city is already working on and kind of help keep that momentum going downstream too of the city. So those are the pieces of our city's stormwater pollution prevention plan and an update kind of on what the city has been doing for stormwater. And the last piece of my presentation is just some things that homeowners can do. And so whether they're watching now or they catch the recording or they find this presentation later online, there's a lot of things that residents can do for stormwater too. So again, when you're mowing, you can mow in. Just keep those grass clippings off the street. 1 bushel of grass clippings, which is around 2 5-gallon buckets, contains enough phosphorus to feed 500 pounds of algae in our lakes and rivers. And so nobody likes to swim in that pea green soup algae water. You know, it's not fun for recreation and it's not healthy for wildlife either. So an easy thing we can do is just make sure we're keeping our grass clippings on our own lawn. We can plant a rain garden too. And so those are just those gardens that are depressions that collect water and help let it soak into the ground instead of just running off our roofs or our driveways. We have a couple resources that I can share with people if they contact me, some good partners with the county and the watershed projects to help plan that rain garden, and there's cost share dollars available for that too. Again, we can use a rain barrel. Residents can use less salt on their own sidewalks and driveways too, and that's been part of our education throughout the winter. Is we think if a little is good, more is better, or if a little works this fast, then more works faster, which is never the case for salt. So just getting that education out so people understand how much is actually going to be effective and how much is going to be a waste means that our residents can do better. Keeping leaves out of the gutters, again, making sure that all that leaves and grass clippings and everything stay out of our storm drains and out of our lakes and rivers. Picking up pet waste, whether it's in your yard or you take your dog for a walk or you take them to the dog park. That pet waste contains a lot of bacteria and pathogens. That can be our issue, that pet waste and that wildlife droppings after storm events in our beaches and things like that. And then fix your vehicle leaks. So when your vehicles are sitting on your driveway or parked on the street too, any of those fluids that are leaking out, they get washed away. And again, virtually impossible to get them out of our surface waters once they hit it. Use less fertilizer. So I'm a person that doesn't want to mow lawn more than I have to anyway. but I understand some people like to just see beautiful green yards. That's wonderful too. It's a little bit like Thanksgiving, where we make a whole meal and we fill our table full of food, but we can't eat it all, and so we have a lot of leftovers. And that's often what happens with fertilizer use on lawns too, is we put lots of fertilizer out hoping to make our lawns and our plants happy. They can't use it all, they can't uptake it all, and so it washes away. And that hits, again, our lakes and our rivers and works to create problems with those algae blooms. Sweep up the excess sand and salt that you're using. So if you see after you've thrown some sand and salt out there, and within a few hours when all the ice is gone or the snow is gone and there's some left over, sweep it up. Either, just toss it or reuse it again next time, but don't let it get washed away with the snow melt. You can wash your vehicle on your driveway. Again, just a way to keep that water on a surface where it can filter through rather than just run off. That storm drain program, adopt a storm drain, which would be a great one for kids to get involved with too. And then the last tip we have is just don't overwater your lawns or your garden. Again, give them as much as they need and can utilize, but don't put it on faster than what can soak in. Don't give them more than they need. And then we can avoid that unnecessary contribution to our stormwater. So that's the end of the presentation. I'll see if I can figure out how to unshare my screen and we can take callers.
If you get a caller to have information, they can call 320-335-7135. Make sure you dial the area code first. Okay, either Ross or Dave, do we have any callers in the queue?
Mr. Mayor, at this time, we have no callers.
Thank you very much. Sarah, thank you for your presentation. Does the council have any questions for Sarah? Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sarah, is there any downside to that brine liquid that they put on? Does it stay in place better than the crystals that they mix in the gravel or sand?
Yeah, so it does. It adheres better to the roadway. So instead of having the granulated salt put down, after 3 or 4, maybe 5 cars drive by, it's kind of all scattered to the edges, and it's not in the drive lanes anymore. And that brine, when it's put down, adheres to the surface better, whether that's snow or ice or even bare pavement. So we can use a lot less salt to create that brine solution, and we get a much more effective winter maintenance product out of it.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to accept the report.
Second.
Motion was made by Fagerly, seconded by Meske to accept the annual stormwater report. Discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Meske,
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Thank you again, Sarah, for your presentation. I'm not sure that that's a good phone number, but maybe that's why we didn't have any calls. But we're done with it. So Councilmember Plowman for the Public Works Safety Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I confirm that everybody can hear me okay? Okay, good. I was having some internet glitches, so I jumped on with my phone here. The Public Works and Safety Committee met on Wednesday, June 3rd by electronic means at right about 5:06 p.m. Members present were myself, Councilmember Osmus, Councilmember Alvarado, and Councilmember Nelson. Others present, there was nobody from the public. Our Public Works Director, Mr. Christensen, our Fire Chief, Mr. Hansen, our Police Chief, Mr. Felt, and our Engineering Administrative Assistant, Ms. Del Bosque. The meeting was called to order. Again, no public comment was taken. We were presented with our public safety updates and statistics. Those statistics are attached to our packet. And now would be a good time if you have questions for either chief. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to our first action item. The first action item that we had was dealing with the Elm Farms, Inc. settlement agreement with regards to the Western Interceptor Stormwater Project. Staff's requested action for this item was to approve a settlement agreement with Elm Farms, Inc. and the city in the amount of $4,200. The background of this project was the city entering into a permanent utility easement with Elm Farms, Inc. That was back in 2018. Free of all encumbrances for utility purposes, around 3/4 of an acre for a portion of farmland for the Western Interceptor Storm Drain Project. It was alleged later by Elm Farms that the city did exceed the scope of the easement and violated the requirements. Long story short, both the city and Elm Farms, Inc. wish to settle this dispute, under which case we are released and discharged from all encumbrances, and both parties will agree to the sum total of the city issuing payment of $4,200 in full settlement of all claims and actions on the property. The motion was made and seconded, and I will then enter that motion now.
I would make a motion to approve the settlement agreement with Elm Farms, Inc. and the city in the amount of $4,200. Councilmember Alvarado.
Okay, Councilmember Alvarado, are you wishing to second the motion, or are you wanting to make the motion?
Second it. Thank you.
Motion made and seconded to approve the agreement for $4,200 and settle all claims with Elm Farms. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
The resolution passes. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next agenda item that we had was regarding the construction material and compaction testing for the 2020 street improvement projects. Staff's recommended and requested action was to adopt the resolution entering into an agreement with Braun Intertech Corp. In the amount of $62,273 for the construction material and compaction testing of the 2020 street improvement projects. Short analysis of this, staff has requested proposals for construction materials and compaction tests for all 5 of the street improvement projects of this year. This includes, but is not limited to, measuring in place density, moisture, compaction testing, sampling and testing concretes for curb and gutter, permeation tests, density tests, also other various scientific tests that they use to analyze soils for these projects. The roads and streets that these particular tests and these funds will be allocated towards would be Civic Center Drive in the amount of $11,806, 7th Street Northwest, $3,869, 9th Street Southeast, $17,444, 6th Street Northeast, $10,204, and First Street South in the amount of $18,950, with a cumulative total of $62,273. A motion was made and seconded authorizing the city to enter into that agreement with Braun Intertech Corp. For the aforementioned amount, and I will make that motion now.
Osmus, I will second that.
Motion been made and seconded to enter into an agreement with Braun Intertech Corporation for $62,273. Discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Meske,
Aye.
Quantis,
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion, that resolution passes as well. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was our last action item of the evening. We had no further business. We adjourned around 6:18, and I would move to file the minutes.
Osmus, second.
Motion made by Plowman, seconded by Osmus, to file the minutes of the Public Works Safety meeting of June 3rd. Discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Meske,
Aye.
Quantis,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
Filing the minutes is passed. Next, we have Finance Committee report. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. The Finance Committee meeting of the City of Willmar met at 5 p.m. on Thursday, June 4th, 2020 via teleconference. Those present were Councilmember Nelson, Baggerly, Osmus. Councilmember Plowman had requested to be excused from the meeting. Others on teleconference were Finance Director Steve Okens and Willmar Municipal Utilities General Manager John Herron. After the meeting was called to order, we did not have any action items. And we moved on to discussion items, which were the Willmar Municipal Utilities 2019 audit and April finance report, and the summaries of those are attached to the minutes. Willmar Municipal Utilities General Manager John Herron presented the 2019 audit report, noting operational revenues of $36,352,000 and operating expenditures of $27,023,000. Net non-operating revenues expenditures were $686,000, and transfers to the City of Willmar were $2,136,000. The resulting change in net position of $7,878,000 was almost entirely transferred for use with capital projects. Mr. Herron reported concerns with the apparent trend of increasing past due accounts. The April 2020 financials report was also presented to the committee. Revenues were down about $1 million compared to this time period last year. The utilities has pursued suspending certain expenditures estimated at about $2,500,000, which has enabled positive retained earnings. Mr. Herron reported that the utilities is starting up the water treatment plant project that was put on hold over a year ago. This project is being pursued again because water usage is nearing capacity in the existing plant, as well as concerns about water quality. The utilities is looking at the possibility of bonding in 2021 for this project with an estimate of $15 million. Additionally, the electric division is going to require an investment in the transmission system of about $8 million, which is estimated to be completed by 2022. The committee was updated with the utilities' response to the COVID pandemic. The lobby remains closed until at least June 15th, and the possibility of delaying that date until July 1st. Other items noted included the district heating system that is coming to a close June 30th, utilities moving its call center to Austin, Minnesota, identification of a site this year yet for the utilities' new building, catastrophic event planning, and downtown street lighting project projected for 2021. That was the end of the utilities report. Finance Director Okens reported that no new information has been received from the state to date. The Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities held a webinar the day before our meeting discussing the possibilities. The link to that webinar will be forwarded to council members once it becomes available, and I believe it was also in the newsletter that we get. It is hoped for more information from the state will be available for our next Finance Committee meeting scheduled for June 18th, 2020. Future agenda items, Michael Schramm of Caris Health, Rice Memorial Hospital is scheduled to attend the June 18th meeting to present their financial information. It was also noted that there were no new council requests to have been received to date. There was no further business to come before the committee, and we adjourned at 5:35. And I would enter a motion to approve the minutes at this time.
Osmus, I'll second.
Never mind.
Motion by Nelson, seconded by Osmus to approve the minutes as presented. Discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Aye.
Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nay.
That motion passes. Next, we have the Labor Relations Committee report of June 8th. Councilmember Maskey.
Yes, we met June 8th. All assigned council members were in attendance, and I think we set a record for the most city employees in attendance. I'll start by issuing an apology to community development. If a couple of these items seem like they would have been more appropriate in that committee, but there wasn't one of those meetings last week, and they did have labor impacts. So we did make 4 motions out of committee, and so we'll take those one at a time. The first item on our agenda that we made a motion for is the Planning and Development Intern position. That position, the description is in your packet, but that was approved and a budget was already approved for that position for 2020, but because of the COVID-19, we had a hiring freeze for that. However, in light of things opening back up and working on the 2020 comprehensive plan, we moved to bring that position forward. And so I'll make that motion at this time.
Second, Schwantes.
Motion by Maskey, seconded by Schwantes to approve the position for Planning and Development intern. Discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nay.
That motion passes. Councilmember Maskey.
We also were talking about the impacts of COVID-19, and especially on our, we'll call it water fund with the Dorothy Olson Aquatic Center, as well as the splash pad, and when and how we should open those. We did look at pool guidelines from the CDC, from the Minnesota Department of Health, and from the Red Cross. There's a bunch of guidelines. A lot of those were in direct reference to the Dorothy Olson Aquatic Center. However, as many of you know, when we were looking at filling the pool, there's some major leaks that have to be dealt with. And so pretty much we have to keep that closed until those things are fixed. And so let me look at the exact wording here. So we made a motion to authorize the closing of the Dorothy Aquatic Center until the governor's order to reopen for the public use and well, that's a little weird, but we're basically recommending that it stays closed until it is repaired, and then we can reassess at that time. And I will introduce that motion at this time.
Second by Schwantes.
Motion by Meske, second by Schwantes. Discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly,
Aye.
Meske,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Bauman,
Aye.
and Nelson.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Councilmember Meske.
Just a reference, if you're using the forms, the form that we came out about the pool was talking about keeping the pool closed as well as the splash pad closed. However, that was not what we passed. The next motion was to reopen the splash pad with safety parameters in place. We did have a very healthy discussion about how to reopen the splash pad. There is no guidance from a lot of these entities on opening something like a splash pad. They're more direct to pools. So in dealing with the 50% occupancy and things like this, and we had some concerns about rotation of people through, but we are going to redirect some city staff to man or woman the station so we can get people to cycle through, because we thought it was very important for us, since the pool will be closed, that we still have some of our water activities if they are done in a safe way. We thought having staff there to ensure it is done in a safe way is important. There will be adequate signage. I was quite impressed with the plan, so with that, the motion is to reopen the splash pad with those parameters of safety, and I'll introduce that motion at this time.
Second.
Motion by Meske, second by Schwantes. Discussion, Councilmember Osmus.
If that passes tonight, are we going to be able to, or will the staff be able to get that working tomorrow, since we're going to have a scorcher tomorrow and Wednesday?
I think Rob or City Administrator Gramitz.
Mayor, member of the council, yes, we are ready to go to open up first thing tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
There's no discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Meske,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Bauman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes as well. Councilmember Meske.
And again, in the spirit of reopening safely, the next item on that we made a motion on is the Willmar bike program and reopening that. Again, we had a great discussion about the safety precautions, disinfecting protocols, signage, and things to this nature. The committee was quite convinced that we are handling that as safe as we can. There does need to be some personal responsibility by the riders as well, but we will provide some sanitation sprays at those stations, and every morning those bikes will be sanitized, and if they have to be done additionally, we will dedicate staff to doing that. And so we decided that we would be able to forward a motion here tonight. So the next one is to move to open up the Willmar bike program with the safety precautions in place, and I'll introduce that motion at this time.
Second Schwantes.
Motion by Meske, second by Schwantes to approve the opening of the Willmar Bikes program. Discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Meske.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Councilmember Meske.
There were no other items to come before the Labor Committee, and so with that, I will move to file the minutes.
Second, couldn't get my mouse moved fast enough.
Councilmember Meske, seconded by Schwantes to approve the minutes. Discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Meske,
Aye.
and Schwantes.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes as well. Those minutes are filed. Just want to make the public aware that at the last council meeting, the council had decided they would like to have more of the discussion happening at the committee level and less happening at the full council level. So you will have noticed that today I am going quickly from the motion being made to the discussion to the roll call. And the reason for that is the desire of the majority of the council to have those discussions happening at committee level. So if you have input that you want on the committee level, you should attend those committee meetings so your voices can be heard. But in the future, we'll move the meetings along rather quickly so that the meetings are done in a timely manner. With that, we'll go to consideration of the City of Willmar's COVID-19 preparedness plan. And I don't know who I'm supposed to call on, so whoever wants to talk.
That's me. Good evening. You have before you the Willmar's COVID-19 preparedness plan. The governor issued his Executive Order 2074, the most recent one, which went into effect June 10th. And that does require all critical businesses to also implement a COVID-19 preparedness plan. And that has to be implemented by June 29th. So that's why it had to come before you tonight and wasn't able to go to committee first. We did implement and develop a plan back in May 7th before it was required for critical businesses. So I made a few updates and you have it in your packet in full tonight. Our city attorney does recommend that the council adopt the preparedness plan and also any subsequent updates as we get further executive orders and also applicable state agencies update their requirements as well.
So with that, we're looking for a motion to approve the City of Willmar's COVID-19 preparedness plan.
So moved.
Second, Schwantes.
Motion by Meske, seconded by Schwantes. Discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
I did have a question, but I will vote aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Meske,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Councilmember Fagerly, you wish to talk about the stingers and the rails. Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I received a call from the manager of the rails, Mr. Overcash, and from Ryan from the Stingers. Like I said, Spicer has agreed to open up and let their town team play. They played last night. Mayor Baker approved that. All the other teams in the league for the rails have approved it for them, but we have not approved it for the rails. And they do have a game scheduled Sunday, June 28th. And if we approve this, Stingers will get on board and start scheduling their games for early July. So I'd make a motion that if the mayor's whatever he signed still is on into July, we bypass that and let the baseball teams, the amateur and the college team, start playing June 28th. If we don't have baseball, I mean, you can kiss it goodbye for the rest of the season. So
Osmus, I'll second for discussion.
Motion made and seconded to approve Stingers and Rails baseball in Willmar starting on June 28th is the date I wrote down. Is that correct, Councilmember Fagerly?
that's correct. Yeah.
Discussion. Councilmember Nelson, followed by Meske, followed by Plowman.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. We received multiple emails this afternoon, and I think it would be important just to hear from both our city administrator, but also our city attorney, Robert Scott. I think we got one like a half an hour before the meeting started. And so I would hope that we could review that first of all to see, because I think there were some requests in there if we were to consider this.
Okay, I did not receive any emails or any correspondence, so I don't know what you're talking about. Councilmember Meske.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. I mean, as someone who's had a lot of conversations about opening things, we always talk and put that through that safety screen, if you will. Where are we for assessing the safety of opening baseball? And if we have these games, a further question would be, are we planning for attendance of fans? And if we are, where are we at in assessing the safety of that particular piece? Because those pieces, I think everything we have opened have gone through that same scrutiny, and our preparedness plan we just approved talks about some of those elements as well.
Certainly. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my primary question before I make a statement would be regarding liability. Where does the city stand legally with regards to liability through the opinion of our city attorney, and where does that leave us?
Okay. I'm gonna now go to our city administrator, Mr. Gramitz, followed by our Park and Rec Director, Mr. Baumgard, and then we'll go to our city attorney, Mr. Scott, and then going back to Councilmember Nelson. Mr. Gramitz.
Mayor and city council members, this is one of those less than clear situations. If you go through the emergency order from the governor, then which references the Minnesota Department of Health guidance, which also even talks about the Department of Natural Resources. But if you go through that sequence, baseball and softball is considered a moderate infectious type of activity. Obviously, wrestling is a very close contact sport. Baseball, softball, not so much. And archery is kind of an individual sport. So you put baseball in the middle where there's large groups of people and there is some moderate contact between the players. And so what that basically does is it just states that the in essence, it says, games are not, competitions and games are not to be played. And then it says something to the effect of, if I can pick it out here real fast, that yeah, I'm not picking it up here, that it's recommended that they should not be played. So on one hand, you say they shouldn't, and on the other hand, they're recommending that they not. And so there's been a quite extensive amount of discussion between the amateur baseball league, actually the umpires, and the communities. And I did also check with the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust. So what you received today in your emails, or have yet to receive, is an article about from the Star Trib, talking about Minnesota amateur baseball, questioning whether or not private baseball fields, could open versus the public baseball fields, because there's a differentiation between both of those two. And it kind of concludes with that the umpires aren't going to, according to the article, the umpires are not going to work the games until the governor says it's okay. Well, the governor hasn't said it's okay yet, kind of a thing. So if they can find umpires, more power to them. So what you've got is a cascading process that ends in a question whether or not they should or should not play. I did contact the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, and the last paragraph basically says this is coming from the risk management attorney. Okay, so it's somebody who spent quite a bit of time putting this response back to me. In essence, it says you have insurance, not for the players kind of a thing, but for the operation of the facility. And he concludes with this. First off, we're still waiting for more guidance from the state on the issue. That's the first, point I want to make. They're waiting for guidance. The second thing I'll point out is he says it's a tough decision. Personally, I'd probably follow the suggested guidelines and not allow the use of the ball fields, at least until we get more guidance from the state. That seems like the safe decision. I do realize that this is easy to say when not faced directly with pressure from people in your community who want to use the ball fields. If use of the ball fields is allowed, I'd suggest the city council document its decision and reasons for the decision in writing to help establish a discretionary immunity defense. I would suggest that City Attorney Scott can explain what that actually means, because I've got 2 sheets of paper of which I'm not going to read everything. Okay, it can be summarized in legal terms so everybody to understand by Mr. Scott, and we can go from there. Mr. Scott has seen this correspondence from the insurance trust. He's also sent me his 2-page document explaining how this all works, which I will not read either, but it comes to kind of the same conclusion, that it's your call, but you maybe want to do it in the right sequence and the right thoughtful manner so that you're protected in the end. So I would actually jump past Mr. Baumgarten and go to Mr. Scott, because I think the important thing is the liability insurance and the process if we were to do it, because and I'm sure Mr. Scott would touch on this, is we are not necessarily going to be in there, I think, cleaning the facility, because we're renting that facility to somebody who's going to use it in a lease or some agreement or whatever that is. So it's our obligation to make sure it's safe, broken steps, handrails, and stuff like that, but they're actually going to be using it. So with that, I don't know that we need to get into, that we're spraying down, everything to make it all super safe. That may fall on somebody else's shoulders, but I'll let Mr. Scott take off on explaining what the information means and what that process might be if you were so inclined to proceed with this.
Okay, so out of respect to our city administrator, I will yield to his recommendation. Is there at some point that you feel, Mr. Gramitz, that we would go back to our park and rec director, or would we circumvent him?
No, I think, we can have his input. The issue quite simply is no need to decide how we're going to do things if you decide not to do it.
Sure.
So if you decide to do it and you're leaning in that direction, we'll pick up the conversation with Mr. Baumgarten, and then he can explain that process to you all.
Okay, that sounds good. With that, I'll go to our city attorney, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, and I agree with everything City Administrator Gramitz just said, but the way I'm looking at this, with the rather large caveat that this is current as of today, and these things change daily. So what we're talking about now may be moved by Wednesday. At this moment, under the latest reopening executive order from the governor, obviously outdoor recreational facilities like baseball fields can be reopened, but under the executive order only in accordance with the Department of Health guidelines. Currently, as the city administrator explained, baseball use of fields is kind of categorized as a medium risk recreational activity. They have some guidelines that apply to those sports that are in the medium risk. One of the big ones that jumps out is that contact be avoided. So even if you're just practicing game situations, that measures be taken to avoid contact. It seems like it's possible for most of baseball activities to comply with that, but I have some questions on specific parts of the game. But anyway, with that said, the other recommendation, and this is the ambiguous part the city administrator mentioned, in one bullet point it says that, and it's reading as instructions to operators of adult sports leagues or teams that games should not be played. Games and competition should not be played. It reads almost mandatory. And then in the next bullet, it says games are not recommended at this time. So again, as of June 15th, it's at least the Department of Health's recommendation that games not be played. With that said, I know lots of cities are facing this question, and the question raised by Councilmember Plowman about liability, I think the risk to the city is pretty low. And the league's attorney, risk assessment attorney that responded separately agreed. There are defenses available to the city if someone were to claim that they used the facility in a manner the city allowed and were to get sick, especially if the city documents the reasons why it would allow a specific use. Having said that, I think once the city expressly or affirmatively gives permission for a facility to be used in a way that is at least contrary to the recommendations of the Department of Health, you do at least open the window and do assume some risk. That risk is insured, as the city administrator mentioned. To back up for a second, I think the position the city's taken with other recreational facilities, whether indoor or outdoor, that are reopening now, is that it's making those facilities available to the user, and it's the user's responsibility to use those facilities in accordance with the Department of Health guidelines, in effect on the date of the use. So again, we don't have to rule anything in or out in the future, but it's the user's responsibility to comply with the guidelines when the use occurs. So that's certainly one option for the city to take in response to the inquiry and request from the rails, is to say, yes, you have permission to use our facility. It's on you to follow the guidelines. And if you think you can interpret the guidelines in a way that would allow you to play a game, taking some precautions, I guess that's up to the rails to make that determination, rather than the city to expressly allow it. So that would be the, I think, safe, conservative response indicated by the league. The league did acknowledge, and I do too, that there may be pressures on the city to allow this use or to communicate that a use is being allowed, especially in advance so that games can be scheduled. And I guess I would just echo the recommendation that if the city is inclined to communicate that it is going to allow games specifically to be played on a given date, that it document the reasons why it is making that decision and how it believes that games can be safely followed, or perhaps make it, again, incumbent on the user to establish safe protocols to be followed to minimize risk of transmission during a game. So with that, I don't know if I've covered everyone's question, but I'd certainly welcome any further questions that council may have.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. I just was concerned we received lengthy emails in less than a half an hour before the meeting that I thought should be reviewed, and so that was my request. I think we have covered them to some degree. With that, I think it's difficult to receive this information. There's lots of confusing things in there. With that, in the short order that we did, but we are here to make that decision, and so I appreciate kind of the review of the emails that we did receive.
Okay, I'll just add that I've been working on this issue, I think, for 6 weeks. I've been working directly with the governor's staff. And the person I've been working with is Patrick Tennis. And he is the, I don't even know what his title is, but he's one of the senior advisors to the governor. As a point of background, Patrick's relative played for the Alexandria Beetles. And so he's very familiar with how the Northwoods League operates. I've had correspondence with our Park and Rec director, along with our city administrator, advising them that I've had these conversations. Neither of them have reached out to me to ask me how those conversations went. So we're faced in a situation where I did not receive the emails. And again, as I stated when this meeting started, I was having trouble getting into the meeting because I'm having computer problems. So my guess is they're probably tied up in the email system. My fault, because my computer's not working properly, and I should have brought it into City Hall today. With that, we're faced with a very difficult decision to make, because I agree wholeheartedly with Councilmember Fagerly. If this doesn't move forward, baseball as we know it in Willmar is going to change. And we need to, as a council, decide how we're going to do that. And then all of us need to get on board and support that decision, similar to what we did 2 weeks ago when we had a split vote, but we all agreed that this is what we're going to do. So the right thing to do is to listen to our staff, listen to our city attorney, and then vote your heart. Understanding what I heard from Attorney Scott is that if you're going to vote for it, make sure you tell Attorney Scott and Administrator Grammets how they can defend it, because they're the ones that are going to be representing us. And so that's where we're at. You know, when Brian and I opened the playground, and Brian will remember these phone calls very well, the same as I did. We were trying to talk to each other, and both of our phones were ringing off the hook. And we made the decision to close, but Spicer didn't. New London didn't. Olivia did. Belgrade did. But none of the rest of them did. And so it's an individual city decision. So you as the council are the voters. If it's a 4-4 vote, then I vote, but otherwise I don't. But you guys are going to make the decision on what happens here. And that's why you're elected. And I know very well that you will make very good, prudent decisions. And I'm very confident in the vote that will happen. So with that, I'm ready to call the question.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Gammons.
Just one last item. When I was contacted mid-morning about this, The request was that the city submit correspondence to the Minnesota Amateur Baseball Association, basically saying that we have insurance, and as long as they follow the guidelines, everything is okay. And in conversations with Mr. Scott, I think we fell on the side that, hey, we do have insurance. I don't know that we need to tell everybody we have insurance. What we do want to say to them is, if you're inclined to do so, is yes, you can use, because you have an agreement or you've got a lease or whatever, to use the ball diamond. I think that's an attempt to say, okay, you have insurance. We're going to shift that liability exposure onto you. You're taking it on your shoulders, okay? And it's not that way. We have liability insurance for the facility. The team has liability insurance for their operation. If somebody trips on second base or gets hit in the head with a ball, that's on them basically. And a hand railing, that's ours. So the way we relay the approval process, if we go that route, I would defer that language to Mr. Scott so that we don't overextend ourselves, or at least protect ourselves as we probably should in that situation.
Okay, I did reach out to the Stingers, and the rest of the league is all opening. So we would be the only city that's not opening. Councilmember Fager.
The Minnesota Baseball Association has guidelines out for a return to play. They have 10 bullet points there on what the players and fans and concessions have to do. And it looks pretty safe to me. The umpires, they have the choice of calling strikes and balls behind the plate or behind the pitcher. So, and everyone has to have their own equipment. There's no handshaking, no high fives, no sunflower seeds, anything like that that you spit out. So, and that was written by Mike Nagel, who's the secretary treasurer. He's an eye doctor here in Willmar, so he's looking out for us too, besides the baseball association. So I think we have to move forward. So.
Okay, roll call.
We're not going to call on Councilmember Nelson?
I didn't see her. Councilmember Nelson, you want to speak again?
I simply was asking for clarification of what the motion is actually going to read. Does it incorporate what Mr. Gramitz and Mr. Scott said, or what is the actual motion that we're voting on?
Councilmember Fagerly, can you repeat your motion?
If the governor does not open up the baseball stadiums for amateur and the college by June 28th or by the 26th, that we allow them to continue to play.
I believe your initial motion was for the 28th, I think. Are you changing the date on that?
It was, because that's when the Rails play, but you're going to have to let the park department or public works fix the field up on Friday or Saturday, so it's ready to go Sunday. So need a little bit of heads up.
Okay, now I'm seeing more hands. I'm going to go by Councilmember Schwantes and then Councilmember Meske.
Thank you. Knowing that the language was we would need discretionary immunity defense, I would like to know what those points are before we vote.
Councilmember Meske.
And I would agree with that. There's a lot of unknowns. This coming up at the last minute without seeing all the background data. You know, when we were opening the other facilities of the city, we were looking at actual plans to do that. And I don't doubt that they could be put together. It just seems like this is very last minute, and I'm not sure about all of the safety pieces in place. I understand, and liability be damned, I'm sorry, but we have a community that those people will all attend those baseball games, and they have to attend those things following the parameters that are put in place. I get that the city's liability might not be there, but the community's liability could if we start opening and we're not following those protocols. What happens if we do not follow a protocol? That's not going to be the city that has to deal with that. How will those be dealt with? There's some questions that are out there that I don't have the answer to. I want to open baseball as well. I'd like to open a lot more than baseball, but we have to do this and roll them out responsibly. So my question, I didn't get the answers to my questions. So as it sits right now, I'm feeling very uncomfortable. I'm hoping that it can happen. I don't know if we didn't vote on it now and had it set on the next schedule and had all the documents out and actually handled this the different way, if that could work. I understand there would be a game for the rails that would be in jeopardy, but I don't know if we have to disrupt and scrap the whole thing if we still have a plan of action. There seems to be a lot of questions unanswered.
Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I was just going to add a couple of points for your consideration. One is I had reviewed the email from the rails that I believe was sent today. I certainly looked at it today. And the request they were making was for a letter from the facility operators of the city, essentially, I think, giving permission to play games and to provide assurances that they are insured. And in this case, I think both the city administrator and I mentioned the city is insured, but it's the city. The city isn't covering all the participants and the spectators. I don't know if that's sufficient for the league. That's a league decision, not the city decision. So even if the city tried to provide the requested letter, it may not be completely, in the city's hands. I guess the second point would be, I think it would be helpful if the city is considering passing a motion that would specifically allow games to be played, even if not expressly allowed by the governor before a specific date, that the city do review at least some of the key points of the preparedness plan that the league has put together to be able to safely conduct games. Getting to Councilmember Schwantes' question, discretionary immunity means when the city council is making a decision in good faith, weighing the different aspects of the public interest, trying to do what's right by its community. The city would have protections and defenses available if a claim was made against the city. By reviewing the specific terms and building that into your decision-making process, you are essentially strengthening the city's position if it were ever to come time to defend it.
I guess part of my concern is that, a city administrator who we've relied on to make these decisions is not forcibly, he's saying that it's a council decision, but his recommendation is to follow the due diligence that he's done, which is his job. And his job is to advise us how to move forward prudently in the best interest of the city as a whole. So Councilmember Plowman, followed by, I saw somebody else here. Osmus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to express appreciation for our city administrator, Mr. Gromitz, and the due diligence that you've done, the attention that you've paid to this, all of the research, all of the communications and whatnot, along with our legal counsel. I believe that they're generally doing their best to do right by our community and keep everybody safe. The only problem that I have here is that, number one, there is inherent danger in everything that we're doing and everything that's done every day. And even with regards to, that's just athletics on their own. Now, with regards to COVID, there are also inherent dangers, and this reopening plan and the reopening guidelines, they're just a set of guidelines by which a barometer has been chosen to go on and You know how doctors say that they're practicing in the medical field? I feel like we're practicing in the pandemic field. And I believe that at some point there has to be a measure of personal accountability. I believe that we've been living in this world now that long enough that people know and understand the whole social distancing concept, and they're adhering to it. The restaurant sector and the food service industry and the other businesses and industries that, you know, they've gone along with these guidelines even in, you know, in times they haven't been happy about it. They haven't been happy about what the rules are and what the guidelines are, but they've been doing it, and they've been doing it successfully, and they've been doing it respectfully. The only part that's a little bit on this issue that causes me pause is that we're being asked as a city about our insurance information. I'd like to flip it around and say, I want to hold harmless signed. Go ahead and use the facilities. There's inherent risk of disease right now. You know it, everybody knows it, but there's also inherent risk if you go to the grocery store of disease and nobody makes you sign off on that. So it's kind of like, at what point are we just going to say, you know what, it's time for personal responsibility and common sense to take over. If you can do it responsibly, which they claim that they're going to do, and they will adhere to that, then fine, but it's also on them. And I understand that other people may not share that sentiment or that agreement, but like I said, we all have to go to the grocery store, and we have been doing that. We all have to go to the gas station. We have been doing that. And at some point, regular life is going to have to resume. And there is going to be some danger, whether or not we like it, and whether or not that lies on the city. That doesn't go for me, because there's governments all across the nation that are going to be facing this, and whether or not there's going to be disease that breaks out in a whole slew of class actions. I think if it's going to happen, it's going to happen one way or another anyways. So are we going to just cancel life? No. So my thought is to just go with it. We're doing it successfully in other areas. It can be done safely here. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to you, Julie.
Okay, I'm up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that the Stingers, at least a month ago, already rolled out part of their plan of how they were going to address the safety and security of the public. They did a video, and I'm sure, you know, they obviously have more PR and marketing than the rails. So I'm confident knowing that they have things in place and how they're going to operate. Now, Councilmember Fagerly talked about what the conditions were going to be for the players, and that they couldn't spit sunflower seeds and what they were all have to do. But I just want to be a little bit more convinced about what the rails have in place for the public. And so if their bleachers all filled up, and then we just sat back and went, oh, gee, I thought they were going to do social distancing. I mean, do they have a plan of how they're going to operate if it opens up?
Mr. Mayor, the Minnesota Baseball Association is the amateur league that all the Class C and B teams, they are people out of high school. Most of them are out of high school. There's a few that play with them, but adults, and that's that 10 bullet points. That's what the whole state has to follow that are associated with the Minnesota Baseball Association. They aren't going to have a full stadium. It'll be 25% capacity. And to be truthful, the Rails do not get that many fans. It's just relatives usually, or girlfriends. So, but what I don't understand is, you know, New London Spicer, they opened up and they get way more fans than the Rails do. And they had no issues up there last night. The state has said the youth baseball teams aren't supposed to travel out of the state, and high school coaches that coach these youth, they can't coach. But yet we've had an area team. They've been up to Fargo the last 2 weeks, and they're going down to Brandon, South Dakota this weekend. No one came back sick. So, and you got to remember, the governor and his staff, they're just estimating. They don't know everything. So.
Okay, that helped answer some of my question, because as far as the stingers, I mean, I know they had a plan, every other seat, where people were going to be seated, how it was going to be laid out, how they were going to come in. And I hadn't heard any of that discussion of how the rails were going to handle that. So at least we know that they're going to operate at 25% or whatever is the governor lays out for community gatherings.
Mr. Gramis, just a minute. We still have Ms. Beckman on the call. I think we're done with the HR stuff and the COVID stuff. Mr. Gramis, do you still want her in attendance?
Well, she's a member of the public. If she wants to stay, she can.
I just wanted to make sure that she wasn't feeling she had to stay because we had a question for her specifically. That was the only reason I was asking. I was trying to be respectful of her time. Mr. Gramitz.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that the one thing that is not gray is that, and as soon as I say that, it's gray. What has been consistent through this whole time period in the last two periods that the governor has put orders out is that no more than 250 people in any one gathering. So if we have 1,000-person stand, 25% is 250 people. So that works. So the stingers will, in essence, reduce their numbers of people in the stands, whereas the rail, maybe they don't even get 250 people. So they're going to be well underneath the maximum that the governor has listed, but it's the stingers who would love to have full stands, and they're going to be limited. So it's not really just a 25%. It's a defined number. Now here's the gray part. Does that include the players? In Park and Rec, when they said you can have 10 people in a cluster, it was 9 kids and the coach. It included staff. And so when the governor says 250 people maximum, I just have a question and I never got an answer and I can't find it anywhere. Does that include the teams? Does that include, the other, the coaches, the umpires, the bat boys, that's a number that's the gray part for me. So I just throw that out there that maybe Mr. Scott can figure that out, but I've not seen any information on that particular topic because it goes both ways in the guidelines that have been put out here. Some include them, some don't. I don't know what 250 people means.
What I was told by the governor's staff is that if the players are segregated from the fans and there's no interaction, then they do not count as the 250. That's what I was told. Okay, I think I've got everybody. Councilmember Schwantes, Councilmember, followed by Nelson again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My issue is the way this motion was made, it was as if it is in direct defiance of the executive orders. That's the way the motion was originally set. I have a real problem with that. And how do we justify to the other businesses and other organizations that have wanted to open and we're not able to do so because they followed the executive rules? If we expect people to respect the authority of the city, how do we not respect the authority of the governor and the executive orders? If this motion was that upon approval of it through the executive orders. They have the go-ahead to begin playing as long as they're following the proper protocols. I'd be all over that. I love baseball. We grew up playing. My family is a baseball family, and so you know, it hurts to say this, but it also hurt to tell my hairstylist, no, you can't do my hair, or you can't do my nails, or I can't go and do this or that or the next thing. But we have people who have a whole lot more information than we do, who are making the decisions on what is appropriate and what is not appropriate for the health and safety of our citizens. And how do you go against that? So if there is an outbreak because someone was at the ball game, and you can tie it back that all these people became ill because someone was asymptomatic and they went out and spread it, how are you going to feel about that? And how are you going to say to the business owner that wanted to open why you could justify this, but you couldn't justify allowing them to have opened their businesses when they wanted to? Because this is all painful. So just that's where I'm at with it.
Okay, Councilmember Nelson, and I'm trying to move us to a vote. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I want to agree with Councilmember Schwantes in that I would love to see baseball open. I'm uncomfortable with what we've brought forward. We've heard lots of checks and balances and things that should be considered and all of those things. However, I don't feel that that has been incorporated into the motion or into the decision, and I'm not quite sure we're ready to do this. And so I just want to make sure that we are doing what's right for our community and what's right for our city, and respect baseball, that we can get this open in a manner that does meet, as Councilmember Schwantes said, the requirements of the state that we have right now. And so I am struggling with the format that we're trying to follow and the different pieces. I think it was great to hear from Mayor Calvin that he's been working on this. That was the first that I had heard that also, but that's fine. But I still don't know if the pieces have been put together that we can be successful and safe in doing this. And so that's my frustration right now, is that I agree with Councilmember Schwantes. I don't know that we are moving this forward in the right manner.
Councilmember Plowman, we seem to have lost you, or at least I've lost you. Does anybody have Councilmember Plowman on their screen?
He has his hand up.
Well, if you have your hand up, that must mean I'm supposed to call on you, so I don't have you on my screen. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you. And
again, I'm having computer problems, everybody.
Yeah, and it could be on my end too. I got kids and Xboxes and devices like you can't imagine. Full respect to everybody that's talked, okay? Because I don't mean anything that I'm about to say disrespectfully to anyone, because I fully understand that and do believe that everybody has everyone's health and well-being and best intentions at heart. There's something about this that just isn't making sense to me, and that is we're arbitrarily picking and choosing where risk exists and where it doesn't. And nobody can prove to me that there's any more risk at the baseball field than what there is risk at the restaurant that is now allowed to be open to a certain capacity. And who are we as local politicians, who do we think that we are, dictating life to this extent? Really, honestly, that's what it boils down to me as, is that it's like now we're going to pick and choose these tiny little things that we will either give our approval on or we won't give our approval on. I'm sorry, that's too far gone for me. Like it's one thing, like if there's a big, I mean, when the clear and present danger was here and the pandemic was rolling in, the governor was issuing orders, locking down schools, closing schools, locking down places of business. That all makes sense to me, right? But that is in the past. And now it's like we're arbitrarily picking and choosing this stuff. And now here we are sitting as a group deciding whether or not we're going to allow people play sports. That's ridiculous. To be honest, I think it's a complete and utter waste of time. We've already gone through, just a second, buddy. We've already gone through like this whole litany of like different stages that different businesses can open, and thank God that some of them have even like made it through with enough money that they can get their businesses back on their feet again. But there's already a list, and it keeps on growing, of businesses that are going to be going out of business because of this. And now we're sitting here going, well, we shouldn't let people play a sport because they might get sick. Well, they might get sick in the 30 other places that they end up going. So what are we doing? This doesn't make any sense to me anymore. It really doesn't. I don't know what any of this is about. It seems like it's more about politics than anything else. So I would be happy to just like vote to open everything up. But we're just lowly city officials. So like I said, it's frustrating because it gets to the point where it's like we're discussing little stuff like this, like it's this big, contagion that's existing within the baseball community or something. I don't know. I'm done. Thank you.
I'm trying to move us to a vote. Councilmember Metzger, followed by Alvarado.
I totally understand your frustration, Councilmember Plowman. I believe this is easy to hijack in a political manner, and I believe many entities have done exactly that. But it is the density of people that is currently the restriction. And when the motion was made, I had a lot of questions, and those questions are now starting to be teased out. I think, again, it would have been easier had this gone to a committee perhaps and talked about it first, but now hearing the Stingers have a plan of density and hearing that the rails have a plan of density, because that is what our businesses that are reopening are faced with, that same dilemma of density. And all of the discussions we had to open up these facilities in Willmar, we've had conversations about how to maintain those population densities. I'm feeling much more comfortable hearing that there is actually more protocols beyond protection for players. My bigger concern was if you exceed those densities, you could start a second string of infections here. And I mean, to compare a lot of the cities we're doing isn't really fair either, because one of those with higher densities have more disease counts for the most part. And so that's the function. And so if we can have a way to reopen these things at a diminished density, I think it's great. And so I am slowly veering back towards the approval instead, because a lot of the questions are being answered. So it was one of those questions, it was one of those things where it was just kind of brought up and I didn't have any background information. So thank you.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I honestly believe that this COVID-19 isn't going to go away anytime soon. I think we're in a lull. I think we have a false sense of security. I think this is a serious disease, and I think we're going to see the effects of it come October, November, and December. We're noticing other states in the South seeing an increase in their COVID counts, and there's mass gatherings. I'm excited about the potential of having baseball with the parameters that are being set. I think that's important. If we play by the rules like we're supposed to, I can see there's a possibility there. I can also understand what Councilmember Schwant has said. There were a lot of businesses that abided by the rules and are still abiding by the rules, and we're I don't know if the word is taking light of this or not, but we have an obligation to support our state government and federal government, and if we're not doing that, then what's the point of law? I think we're falling into a trap here. So I like the wording that the attorney says. If you play, it's going to be at your own discretion, and we're not saying that we're going to, we're not saying we're giving the blessing. We're going to put it on them and say, hey, so COVID's not going away. We're going to see it. We're going to feel it. We're going to know about it come October, November, and December. I'm willing to bet money on that as we see the South seeing increased numbers. So I hope the decisions we make, we can live with, because they're going to be impactful. Thank you.
Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus,
Aye.
Councilmember Plowman,
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson,
No.
Councilmember Fagerly,
Aye.
Councilmember Meske,
Aye.
Councilmember Schwantes,
Nay.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado.
Nay.
Okay, we've got 5 ayes and 3 nays.
The motion passes as presented. Mr. Gramitz, do you want us now to go to Park and Recs Director, or do you have the information you need? I think we still need to establish the parameters, right?
Yeah, I guess if Mr. Baumgarten has some brief comments that he wants to inform the city council of how this would work, by the end of the month, I would allow him that opportunity to let you know what the plan is. So, Rob?
Mayor, member of the council, I've had numerous conversations with the owners of the Stingers and Mr. Overcash about practices and games. I think that we're well equipped and we're ready to go. Stingers probably a little bit more because they're a little bit more in depth with their COVID plan. Just need to have some more conversations with Mr. Overcash and their plan. I have had conversations with Attorney Scott about people using our facilities and what they would need to do of signing off on certain things. So I think that Robert Scott and I will just need to have some conversations along with city administrator about working up those details on a rental agreement / lease for those users. The Stingers already have a lease with us, so we just have to get one worked up for the rails. I think I would be foolish if I didn't say this though, but with this motion being passed, I know that we're going to get also questions about adult softball now. With something like this opening up, I know I'm going to get phone calls tomorrow wondering why or when can adult softball open up. So it's just going to be a continual ripple effect to see what we can open up for more recreation programs. But so I think just those conversations need to be put in place. Guidelines need to be followed by the Minnesota Department of Health because that's what our rec programs are following. We have had the county look at our procedures and then we've got the okay from them. So I just think everyone just has to do their due diligence and make sure that everything's followed correctly.
Okay, next item on the agenda is consideration of an extension of the emergency ordinance exempting temporary signs. I'm not sure who this is going to. Mr. Gramitz, is this going to you?
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, yes, this is one of those emergency ordinances that has a time limit. If you wish to let it expire, you need do nothing. If you want to continue to extend it during the COVID-19 situation we find ourselves in so that people can put signs out alerting people that they're open for business, then you would re-adopt.
So Mr. Fagerly, I think, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Fagerly, I think this came under your committee originally. So
It did.
do you have a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion to extend the emergency ordinance exempting temporary signs.
Second.
Motion by Fagerly, seconded by Davis. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Meske,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion pass, or that resolution passes to continue that. Next, we have council member announcements, and I'll start with council member Metzke.
None.
Council member Schwantes,
I'll pass.
council member Davis,
Nothing from me tonight.
council member Alvarado,
Nothing, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
council member Osmus, I believe.
Yes, in light of our presentation this evening, I just want to remind everybody to mow in. And
Fernando, you missed it. Council member Plowman.
Doggone it, Fernando. I was counting on that one for you too, because I was out on my motorcycle the other night, and that's a big thing. So yeah, I'm doubling down on that one. Mow in, please. And big thanks to Public Works after the crazy wind that we've been experiencing the past few days. Beautiful weather, but super windy. Watching really good response from the Public Works Department. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
I'll pass.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Let's play baseball. Thank you.
With that, then we'll go to council committee meeting dates. Councilmember Nelson.
The Finance Committee will meet on Thursday, June 18th at 5 p.m. The agenda is out.
Councilman Fagerly.
Community development, they're working on an addition to the Renaissance program, but he didn't say if we're gonna meet yet or not, so I don't think it's quite ready.
Councilmember Maskey.
Labor has one item on the agenda for the rec assistant hiring for the meeting on the 22nd, 6:15.
And Councilmember Plowman.
I do not believe that Public Works, Public Safety is going to be meeting this week. If any council members have items that they would wish to be thrown on the next agenda, please email myself and our Public Works Director. Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Osmus, second.
Motion by Maskey, seconded by Osmus. We're adjourned.